Hello and welcome to our Fight Network studios. I am John Pollock along with Robin Black. We're going to have John Ramdeen coming up a little later on, but we do have some breaking news that we're going to discuss right off the top, and that is the cacophony of problems, Robin, attached with UFC 196 on February the 6th. To rewind, it was on Sunday afternoon that we learned from UFC President Dana White, Cain Velasquez had suffered a back injury and was out of the title fight in his rematch with Werdum. And tentatively, Stipe Miocic was going to be replacing Velasquez to take on Fabricio Werdum. We fast forward to Monday afternoon, and it comes out through MMAfighting.com that Fabricio Werdum is also removing himself from the fight. Guilherme Cruz reporting the story, and we go to a quote that Werdum gave to Brazilian journalists, quote, "I was already injured on Monday. I have a foot injury and haven't been able to throw kicks in training for 2 weeks. I would still fight Cain because I was injured the last time, but I also hurt my back last Friday. I went to the doctor, tried to continue training, but couldn't spar as I should spar." He goes on to say, "I decided not to fight because I'm not 100%. If Cain was the opponent, I would go on. It's not his fault. It's nobody's fault. Injuries happen. You can't avoid them. I have no option. I made this decision because I'm not feeling 100%. And that presents a massive problem for February the 6th, Robin. We should also add the fact that Ariel Helwani, also at MMAfighting.com, reporting that Fabricio Werdum is going to see a doctor on Tuesday, but based on that quote, mentally, it seems that Werdum is ruling out any fight on February 6th.
Yeah, now that things can change, there's no doubt about that. And saying I was already injured and I was going to fight means you conceivably can fight. Because you can conceivably fight, I know Ariel's tweet said that he's going to a doctor. I know that the UFC has some high-level doctors. The right doctor can say, how do you feel? Does this improve? What if we do this to it? So this isn't 100% done yet. Another thing that really helps with pain is a raise. You know, like if you get offered something extra, sometimes that will help. It's like, my back really hurts. We'll give you another point on the pay-per-view. Oh, Jesus, feeling a little better. So there are things that can influence this sort of thing. But as of right now, yeah, mentally he is out. Can he mentally get back in? Maybe.
Yeah, I think we have to go with the assumption that this fight, I'm very pessimistic that
Yes.
Fabricio Werdum is going to fight on February the 6th, which creates a big problem because as much as we can applaud what the UFC has done for a number of their most recent shows, stacking shows that in the event of one title fight falling out, you have another or another marquee fight. In this case, second from the top, you have Johnny Hendricks and Stephen Thompson, and while that's an interesting fight, on pay-per-view, you can't headline with that fight. Stipe Miocic is theoretically still available on 2 weeks' notice, but he was going on the idea that I'm taking this fight on 2 weeks' notice for a title.
Right.
And to just fight anybody, that's a tougher sell, I think, for even Miocic to want to take on 2 weeks and risk a potential title fight.
So many moving parts with any of these things. One change changes a ton. And then maybe you think, well, maybe we can fix it. Why don't we get Josh Barnett to move him back a week, put him in against Stipe Miocic? Hey, man, we've seen interim titles for the sake of having a title before. It could happen. But then what do? You have another card. There's so many moving parts in fighting. That's the real challenge. It's a strange thing chatting about it now. But tomorrow there could be a different main event. They can move the whole thing to Fight Pass. There's a lot of different options. But as of right now, and among those different options is Werdum comes back in, gets a bit of treatment, gets a few things, gets his head together and says, yeah, let's do this. So a lot of different possibilities.
Roy Nelson and Jared Rosholt are also fighting on this card. I don't know if that's something where you've seen Stipe Miocic and Roy Nelson. I really have a hard time imagining Miocic wants to fight for anything but a title at this point on such short notice. It's difficult. And the UFC, the last thing they're going to want to do is cancel a pay-per-view. It is massive losses to cancel a pay-per-view. They did it with 151. We saw it in August of 2014 as well in Los Angeles. It is a last-ditch effort. And I think the UFC, if they can salvage anything together, they'll go ahead with this. As you look at these options, I mean, what comes to mind here? I mean, a wild card in all of this is Alistair Overeem, who has, I would say, quite a lot of leverage, Robin, in that that's a fight that you have an automatic eliminator bout with Stipe Miocic. It's it's not the perfect fit for a main event on pay-per-view, but that's a pretty good consolation prize.
Would sure, like in the world of things going your way, Alistair Overeem is currently negotiating a brand new contract. And hey, if we get that new contract together, I can save your pay-per-view. Man, that is a lot of leverage. So it's maybe too much leverage for them to decide to go that way because they might have to overpay him. It's a really weird one. It's a very strange little pocket. Is there any 2 weeks is also right on that line where somebody that's a little bit bigger than they would normally be in fighting shape can make the weight. You're 25 pounds over your fighting shape, but you have 2 weeks, it is possible. So we're still, 1 week it becomes really last ditch. 2 weeks is a little more flexibility. So we could see a main event we're not even thinking of right now. Joanna Jędrzejczyk could be available and able to make 115 pounds on 2 weeks. We don't know.
It's one of the silver linings in all this that you are dealing with a heavyweight replacement where a short notice fight, you don't have to necessarily worry about a guy that's ballooned over 265 to have to cut weight. These are guys that are kind of within that very big ballpark that is the heavyweight division. That's something working on the UFC side, but on the other, it's just a lot of names, and you're talking about a main event level. These fighters are thinking with their head on their shoulders that, man, I can really do the UFC a solid here, but I'm putting a lot at risk to take a fight on very short notice against someone a level of a Stipe Miocic. Or if you're Stipe, why am I risking this title fight? I just look great against Andrei Arlovski. I put in a full camp for that, and I should reap the rewards of that victory and not have to compromise it just because two other guys that I had no control over got hurt.
That's right. There's certain guys that are really built for taking short notice fights. The mentality, they're available. Cowboy Cerrone's probably around right now. He's supposed to fight in a couple weeks, but it's at 170. Hey, call Cowboy. Rich Franklin, too bad that guy retired. That guy will take that fight on two. Certain guys are psychologically built to be able to take a short notice fight. They're within weight, but there's not that many of them. And so there may be something out there just outside of the realm of possibility that we're thinking about. But when the ideal for a pay-per-view on Super Bowl weekend is a title fight. And you start looking down, Dan Cormier, I don't see, he gets pretty big. I don't see him doing that. Luke Rockhold, he's a big dude, probably celebrating the biggest victory of his life. You get down to Robbie, who's kind of probably pretty injured after that last fight, and down and down and down. And all of a sudden, Conor McGregor is probably about to tweet any minute that he'll fight Dos Anjos that weekend, but I don't see that happening.
Some people that are tuning into this, it's a double whammy for them because of Cain Velasquez, who was hurt we got the news of it on Sunday, which is one that, I mean, it's certainly concerning when you hear it's yet another injury that Cain Velasquez has to work through. What are just your overall assessments of Cain Velasquez, and if this injury to Werdum might end up being a good thing for Cain in that he might get that next title match and they're just going to take this fight and put it at a later date?
There's, for Cain Velasquez, he's been injured a lot. Those guys drive so hard in that gym. You got the guy was just fighting to regain his heavyweight championship, and you got the 205 champ and 185 champ. This was a hell of a fight for Cain. It was tough on his body, it was tough on his lungs, and I'm sure it was tough psychologically. He had never felt the slower, more tired fighter ever in his life. Yes, elevation played a role in that, but so did the way that Werdum fought him. That's the fight he really wants, and he may end up getting it. Werdum, I'm injured, but I'll still fight Cain. But now I'm injured and this ain't worth it. That may give Cain the fight that he wants coming up.
A lot of focus is going to be on Cain Velasquez and his health, but I think we also have to look at this guy in terms of assessing his own career. When you look at the hiccups he's had in his career, it was going into that fight with Junior Dos Santos with a wrecked knee, and he paid for it. And with Fabricio Werdum, I think Cain can honestly look at himself and say, did I put myself in the best position possible to fight Fabricio Werdum? And maybe he didn't because of many different issues. And he wasn't going to do it here where he was already hurt going in against what he thought was a theoretically healthy Werdum.
I was almost done my breakdown on Cain, and then I was almost done my breakdown on Stipe. To be honest, Stipe presented some more challenges because he fights so well backing up. Werdum is a very, very tough fight for Cain, but that's the fight Cain wants, and that's the fight we want to see.
We are, of course, going to keep you as up-to-date as possible on this developing story within the UFC's heavyweight division and what is going to happen with the state of UFC 196, so you'll want to keep it locked here. We are also back on Thursday night with our preview show at 6 Eastern, previewing this Saturday's card with Anthony Johnson taking on Ryan Bader in the main event.